It is 8 o'clock. This is Sky News Breakfast, and these are our top stories. Cut off. Russia is to stop sending electricity supplies to Finland as tensions grow over Helsinki's desire to join NATO. The worst is over. Ukraine's spy chief tells Sky News there are moves for a coup against President Putin, and the war with Russia could be over by the end of the year. A royal visit. Prince William goes in person to the home of Deborah James to give her damehood. The government delays its plans to ban buy one get one free deals on unhealthy foods, all part of a response to the cost of living crisis. The link between the high cost of living and the strain on mental health. We visit Burnley, where 1 in 8 people are on universal credit.
People feeling that their back's up against the wall, that they've nowhere to go, which then affects their mental health and becoming more despondent.
For he's a jolly wood fellow. The first beaver born in Exmoor in 400 years celebrates his first birthday. At 1:45, we'll take a final run through the papers with Badisha and Matthew Stadlin. And it is a big day in the football calendar. We'll be looking ahead to the FA Cup final, where Liverpool play Chelsea at Wembley Stadium. Morning all. Russia is cutting off electricity supplies to Finland from today. The move, seen by many as retaliation for Finland's desire to join NATO, has been blamed by the Russian supply company on Finland not paying its bills. The news comes as Ukraine's military spy chief has told Sky News there are moves for a coup to topple President Putin and that the war with Russia will be over by the end of the year. The Russian supply company has said it will suspend electricity supplies to Finland today amidst rising tensions over Helsinki's bid to join NATO. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Prosecutor General has said her office is preparing 41 war crimes cases against Russian soldiers. And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said talks with Russia to evacuate wounded soldiers from the Azovstal plant in Mariupol are underway. In his nightly address to his country, President Zelensky also said Russian forces were taking heavy losses.
Today we can report the 200th downed Russian military airplane. Russia hasn't lost so much aviation in any of its wars in decades. Russia has also lost 27,000 soldiers, many of whom were young conscripts. Russia has lost more than 3,000 tanks, armoured vehicles, drones, and all of its perspectives as a state.
Well, as mentioned, Ukraine's military spy chief has told Sky News a coup is brewing against Vladimir Putin and that the war with Russia will be over by the end of the year. Speaking after a series of military successes by Ukrainian forces against Russian manoeuvres, Major General Kirilo Budanov claims that Ukraine knows everything about Russia's plans, quotes, almost as they are being made. Well, after failing to take the capital, Russia is now focusing its efforts on the Donbass region. There's intense fighting in the cities of Izium, Crimea, Severodonetsk and Mariupol, with the intention, it's understood, to encircle specialist Ukrainian troops in the east. Ukraine has been pushing back, though, notably around Kharkiv in the north and Mykolaiv in the south. And the spy chief told our international affairs editor Dominic Wycorn that is a sign of things to come.
He forecast Russia's invasion of Ukraine when most didn't think it would happen. And now Ukraine's top military spy has another prediction for how the war it started will end.
Переломний момент наступить в другій половині серпня. Скажімо так, більша частина активних дій, воєнних дій, завершиться до кінця цього року.
Major Kirilo Budanov has watched Ukraine's enemies up close and scrutinised their moves. And goes further. Russia's defeat, he says, will be disastrous for both its leader and his country.
Це все призведе до зміни політичного керівництва Російської Федерації. Такі процеси вже запущені і вони вже рухаються в цьому напрямі.
Do you mean a coup is already happening in Russia?
Так, рух в цьому напряму вже розпочався і його вже неможливо зупинити.
Rumours about Putin's ill health, he says, are confirmed by Ukrainian intelligence.
Єдине, що я можу сказати, що ми абсолютно це підтверджуємо. Він знаходиться в досить негарному психоемоційному та фізіологічному стані. Він дуже сильно хворий. У нього Одночасно у нього кілька значних захворювань, одне з яких це є рак.
Russia is suffering huge losses, the general says. An entire battalion wiped out trying to cross this river in Donetsk. And in the area around Kharkiv, its forces pushed back almost to the Russian border. Russia's much vaunted modernised military has proved itself a myth in Ukraine, he says, whatever image it likes to project.
Ми давно кажемо, що тієї розпіареної військової міці, яку намагається на всіляких навчаннях, відеороликах показати Російська Федерація, її не існує. Є просто величезна орда зі зброєю. Ось і все, що у них є.
We are in an information war, propaganda spewed by both sides. But this is the first time a senior official here has said when the war will end. A sign of growing confidence their enemy will be beaten.
What are your feelings now?
My feelings now?
Yeah.
Optimistic.
Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Kyiv.
And we can speak to our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn. Good to see you, Dom. Let's pick up on the last point in your report, in fact. Look, a man who is a military spy chief knows a thing or two about disinformation. So should we take everything he says with a cellar of salt?
I think to a certain extent. I mean, we are in an information war. There's a lot of propaganda being thrown around by both sides. His office was fascinating. It was stuffed full of the paraphernalia of war. A lampstand was a rifle. There were machine guns piled up behind his desk. He had a machine gun magazine that was used as a paperweight, and he had this chess set on the table. And how much of that was for show, how much it was generally because he is a spy chief gathering intelligence in the heart of war, it's unclear. But I think what we have to say about him is that even though we are hearing about a lot of propaganda, he is someone whose predictions have been proven correct in the past. When most of the world, including a lot of the members of his government last year in the run-up to the invasion, were pretty sceptical about the chances of Russia invading Ukraine, didn't think it would happen, he stuck his neck out and said, yes, it would happen. And he said when? He said the end of January, the beginning of February, so a little bit early, but otherwise he was spot on, and he seemed very assured, very confident and certain in his conclusions. And I said, how can you be sure? And he said, I'm not predicting it, I know it. I see the intelligence, I see the evidence. What's frustrating is he wouldn't say what will happen in August to create that turning point that would then shift the war decisively in Ukraine's favour, and then the war would end by the end of the year. But he said it would be a combination of political and military factors. So some speculation as a team we had as we left was it could be to do with Putin's health. Did he know something about Putin's health that is going to lead to him deteriorating and possibly dying by August? Because Budanov has also said in the past the war will end with Putin's death. He's pretty certain that Putin is very ill. He's got cancer and a number of other illnesses. And he says his defeat, Russia's defeat in this war, will not just be bad news for the Russian leader, but will lead to Russia falling apart into 4 different regions. So take that as you will, but do bear in mind he's somebody who has made predictions in the past and they've been correct.
Dominic, many thanks. Prince William has visited the cancer awareness champion Deborah James at her home to give her damehood. It comes as the total raised for cancer research by the campaigner and podcast host has surpassed £5 million. The 40-year-old, who was diagnosed with cancer in 2016, shared a little earlier in the week that she had begun end-of-life care as her body simply wasn't playing ball. Sally Lockwood reports on a campaigner sure to leave a remarkable legacy.
Deborah James has danced her way to a damehood. Since her cancer diagnosis, she's not wasted a moment. Even after breaking the news she was beginning end-of-life care, the Royal Marsden Hospital is one of the chosen beneficiaries of her fundraising. It's been an emotional week for her consultant, who's treated Deborah for more than 5 years.
You know, I learned a lot from Deborah about the human endeavour, about the challenges that cancer patients face. And also she came up with a few good research ideas that we discussed.
I can't go out. I'm sick.
Deborah James used her social media platform Bowel Babe to break the taboos of cancer. Her podcast, You, Me and the Big C, propelled the deputy head teacher to fame. Her final episode was recorded after she'd begun end-of-life care.
I hope that anyone who's listened to the pod, who has read one of my columns, read my book, or looked at my Instagram and stuff, will, I suppose, if they can afford to, buy me a gin and tonic to send me on my way. And by doing so, hopefully we can raise some money for these charities.
Deborah was speaking to her podcast producer this week after she'd announced she'd ended active care.
When I look down and I see it's Deborah, I'll think, wow, what's this going to be next? You know, what's the next idea, Debs? And I'll miss that. That's what I'll miss.
Deborah James often dressed up to spread the word for people to get checked. Tributes so often come too late, after someone is no longer with us. For Deborah James, the nation has been able to show their love and appreciation with one of the country's highest honours.
I suppose that's it from me. I can't believe it. That is it from me. Enjoy life because it is so precious. It's all I want right now is more time and more life. And also check your poo.
Sally Lockwood, Sky News.
And let's take a quick look at the total amount raised by Deborah. Well, as you can see, over £5.5 million. In fact, that's up £60,000 in just the last hour. Yeah, that's going to hit 6 million before too long. Now, the High Court has ruled that a 12-year-old boy who suffered catastrophic brain damage should undergo a test so that doctors can try to establish whether his brain is still active, I should say. Archie Battersby, who's from Southend, hasn't regained consciousness after suffering brain damage in an incident more than a month ago. The judge concluded that a brainstem test would be in Archie's best interests. His mother, however, is urging the court to give her son some more time.
He's just a beautiful, beautiful, innocent child. He's brought every single day since that baby was born. He just put a smile on my face. He's made me laugh. He's just a beautiful little boy. He's happy. He's active. He's got a beautiful personality. He's kind. He loves animals. He's sensitive.
The Queen has made her first public appearance since she missed the state opening of Parliament on Tuesday. She attended the Royal Windsor Horse Show, watching her animals take to the parade ring, and was delighted to be there. She was last seen in public at Prince Philip's memorial service in March. Big screens will be set up in Britain's capital cities so that people can watch the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Screens broadcasting the events will be placed in Pall Mall, Princes Street Gardens in Edinburgh and in Bute Park in Cardiff across the bank holiday weekend. Now, foreign ministers of the G7 will conclude talks today, which have been taking place in Germany. Ukraine was top of the agenda, with diplomats pledging to provide more military aid in what they called a powerful sign of unity. The co-founder of the Council on Geostrategy, James Rogers, joins us now. James, very good morning to you. I wonder what you may have made of what seems like pending move by both Sweden and Finland to get into NATO. What is your assessment of how much that shakes the kaleidoscope, so to speak?
Yeah, good morning, to be with you. This is quite a significant move because, of course, Finland and Sweden remained primarily neutral during the Cold War. And although they moved closer towards NATO and, of course, with their membership of the European Union, the Western position during the aftermath of the Cold War, they're now seeking direct NATO membership. The President and Prime Minister of Finland issued a statement 2 days ago, and then Sweden issued a report yesterday which confirmed that they see the deterioration of the European strategic situation. They believe that Russia is an increasingly unpredictable state, even more unpredictable than the Soviet Union was, and that this requires them both to move towards membership of NATO. And of course, a couple of days before that, Boris Johnson visited both capitals to issue security assurances to both countries.
So what then do we make of potential opposition coming from Turkey? I mean, do they have the casting vote in all of this? How much sway does Erdoğan really have in capitals like Washington, London, so on?
Well, it requires unanimity for a new member to join the alliance, so Turkey could cause problems. However, some analysts believe that it's more a case that Turkey might be seeking some kind of concessions rather than seeking to block them outright. And of course, countries like the US and the UK, which provide the mainstay of the resources and strategic wherewithal of the alliance, have some say over the ultimate direction, shall we say, but it could cause some diplomatic wrangling in order to placate the Turks and allow both Sweden and Finland in.
We had an interview, we've been carrying on the channel, an interview with between our international affairs editor and the head of defence intelligence for Ukraine. A couple of eye-raising kind of lines coming out of that. The first, of course, that there could be an end in sight to the war. The second, that there is potentially a coup building in Moscow. I mean, how much validity should we give to those in the absence of any further evidence?
I think that's difficult to say. I mean, I think the Russian objective has changed, of course. Initially, it was to seize Kiev in a sort of lightning strike. That failed, and then the Russians tried to use heavy armour to surround, encircle, and then seize the city. That also failed. So now they are moving increasingly to operations in the east of Ukraine, where they already have a degree of influence. Now, the Russians have always sought, I think, over the last, let's say, 8 years since they invaded Ukraine back in 2014, to engage in what's called non-linear warfare. That is to say, to actually provoke and promote conflict in the country in order to drag it down and to prevent it from moving towards both NATO and the European Union, which, of course, is what Ukraine has been seeking to do. So there might be an objective here within Russia to actually just prolong the conflict without end in order to prevent Ukraine from consolidating and joining the West. Now, on the terms of a coup in Moscow, that is a possibility, but at this stage, I think it is very unlikely. The Putin regime has some degree of control over the country and has built that up over the last 20-odd years. But nonetheless, it is true that the regime's war in Ukraine has failed miserably so far, and that's becoming increasingly apparent to the Russian people. It is no longer a special military operation, as the Kremlin calls it, but it's become increasingly an outright war, and a war, as we've seen, with some pretty horrendous consequences and actions undertaken by the Russians. And I think this, despite the regime's control over the media space, has become increasingly apparent to the Russian people. As well as, of course, the Russian political and economic elites. And in that context, a coup in the long run or a regime change within the country cannot be entirely, I think, ruled out.
How then is this information getting to the Russian public, given the stranglehold that they have on the media, given the controls that they place on the internet and elsewhere? I mean, this week, of course, it was Victory Day parade, and lots of Russian eyes will have been on that, but it was a drastically reduced Victory Day parade by my reckoning.
Yeah. I think it primarily through word of mouth and information that's seeping through from the soldiers that have been sent to Ukraine to fight, getting back to their families, and other forms of information exchange like that. Of course, as you rightly point out, that the regime does continue to have a strong hold over the information that the Russian people are able to access.
Great to have you on the programme this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, the government is to delay a ban on buy one, get one free deals for unhealthy food products because of what it says is the unprecedented squeeze on living standards. Sky's Shingi Marariki joins us once again in the studio. I mean, Shingi, we have, when we've been chatting this morning, been focusing on the bog-off aspect of what the government's announced. They've also announced, though, that ban on advertising junk food to children before the watershed, that's not coming in. What's that about? Because it can't be to do with the cost of living crisis.
That's right. That ban is pushed back until January 2024 at the earliest. And according to newspaper reports, it sounds like ministers have told the Prime Minister that this would have an economic impact on the food and drink industry. Therefore, he shouldn't go forward with those changes. We also know that those food and drink companies spend millions on advertising with big broadcasters. Critics will say that that is putting the economy and politics before the health of our nation's children. And it's interesting how political this issue has now become. They are saying that the government had its own targets, its own benchmark, which is 2030 being the the target of cutting childhood obesity. That is not going to be met, they say, if they put the economics first. It's an interesting one, and I think the government will have a lot to have to justify, not just on the bog-off deals, but also, like you say, on this advertising as well.
Yeah, might have to wait for the politicians to get back to work on Monday for the opprobrium to start, but it will come. For now, Shingy, thank you. Now, COVID is spreading through the secret and, of course, unvaccinated state of North Korea. The country's leader, Kim Jong-un, has said his country is facing a great disaster after 21 deaths were reported from people who had apparently suffered a fever. The state news agency didn't mention COVID-19, but said around 280,000 people were being treated and 27 had lost their lives since late April. At least 27 people have been killed after a fire broke out in a 4-storey building on the outskirts of India's capital, Delhi. Firefighters battled to extinguish the flames for almost 5 hours and have begun a search operation to look for anyone trapped in the rubble. The Office of New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has said she's tested positive for coronavirus and is suffering from moderate symptoms. It comes just days after the government announced the relaxation of the country's tight border controls, which have been enforced since the start of the pandemic. Let's see how the weekend's weather's looking.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
A quiet start to the weekend, high pressure drifting by, which will help to keep the conditions settled. But the weather will become more changeable from Sunday onwards, although it will stay rather warm. This morning, any early mist should clear to sunshine. Cloud will drift on and off western coasts, but it should be dry for most with some good sunny spells. The sun will be strong, lifting temperatures to a high of 23 or even 24 degrees Celsius. UV levels will be high, along with the pollen count. The fine conditions will last into the evening, away from the southwest, where showery outbreaks will spread in.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Welcome back. Quick reminder as to our top stories. And the Russian supply company RAO Nordic has said it will suspend electricity to Finland today amidst rising tensions over Helsinki's bid to join NATO. The cancer campaigner and podcast host Deborah James has been given a damehood by Prince William at her home. And the government is to delay a ban on buy one, get one free deals for unhealthy food products. Now, as mental health services report increased demands due to the strain of rising costs, Sky News has spoken to families relying on a church in Burnley for financial and mental health support. Almost a third of people in the town live in fuel poverty, and 1 in every 8 claim universal credit. Sky's Fraser Maud reports.
For mother of 9, Lindsay, life has never been easy.
Yeah, it's always been a struggle, trying to consistently make sure that they have the right necessities that they need.
Now the cost of living crisis is adding to her anxiety and damaging her already fragile mental health.
I'm on a lot of high medication. I have been my whole life, basically. And if it wasn't for the medication I take, I don't think I'd be able to sleep at night. I don't think I'd be able to think properly. I'd be constantly worried and depressed and just fear for my kids, basically, that I'm not doing right by them.
Lindsay gets help and support here, the church on the street. Run by the man known as Pastor Mick, it's a non-funded centre providing financial, spiritual and mental health advice for those most in need. And the cost of living crisis is adding to the problem.
I think slowly but surely numbers are growing, slowly but surely. They're going bigger and bigger. And I find that people feeling that their backs up against the wall, that they've nowhere to go, which then affects their mental health and they're becoming more despondent and more depression setting in.
In a town where the number of people claiming universal credit has gone up by over 50% in the last 2 years, the need for Pastor Mick's help is greater than ever.
Is there a direct relationship between the cost of living crisis and people's mental health?
Yeah, so where there's poverty, there's anxiety. There's not knowing where you're going to get your next meal from. There isn't knowing kind of whether you can put gas and electric on. There's how am I going to pay the top up for my housing? How am I going to get through that? That causes stress, anxiety, physical and of course mental health problems.
A new partnership between the church and the NHS allows health professionals to provide a gateway to more traditional services.
I really believe by doing this more outreach work, as we would call it, is definitely benefiting people and bridging, bridging the gap and helping those people, who have perhaps been disadvantaged.
The charity Mental Health UK says the number of people contacting them for mental health and financial advice has gone up by over 96% in the past 12 months. And with inflation still on the up, it seems theirs and Pastor Mick's fears of a mental health pandemic may sadly be all too prophetic. Fraser Maud, Sky News, Burnley.
Just a reminder that next week, Kate will be taking her show on the road for a special series of programmes. She'll be going back to her roots and finding out how the people of Wigan feel about the cost of living crisis. All that at the usual time from Monday. Elon Musk has said his £36 billion takeover of Twitter is temporarily on hold. So, will it happen? Some have accused him of not being entirely serious about the bid from the start. Well, let's get the latest from social media expert Matt Navarra. Matt, great to see you this morning. Well, look, let's start with the practicalities of it. What exactly is it that Elon Musk is complaining about at the moment as regards bot accounts on Twitter? Why is this a sticking point?
Well, this is all the craziness of this deal. He's come out now this late hour and suggested that Twitter, he's got concerns that there's more than 5%, which is the amount of spam and bot accounts that Twitter has disclosed and has disclosed for some time. He feels that it could be more now. And because he thinks there could be more, he wants to check that because he's a bit concerned about whether he wants to continue with the deal. But this is something that Twitter has disclosed many times, and it's a number that has been in their documents. And he had the opportunity as part of the deal to do an advanced kind of due diligence exercise before kind of signing the contract, and he chose not to do it. So it's rather surprising at this late stage that he's thrown this curveball in.
Rather surprising. I'm wondering if euphemistically you are perhaps suggesting that he might not have been entirely serious about this from the get-go. Certainly, there are a lot of people who are coming to that conclusion.
Yeah, there's lots of competing theories as to why he's saying this now. One of them is that the tech stocks have taken a huge hammering on the markets recently, and the value of Twitter has dropped significantly. And also the value of his own Tesla stocks, which he's using to fund the deal, has gone down, making the deal even more expensive. So it could be that this is angling for a way to back out of the deal. It could be he's angling to get a discount on the price of Twitter. But also he's very unpredictable and kind of likes to be the centre of attention with this sort of stuff. And it could just be, it was Friday the 13th and Elon Musk wanted to have some fun.
Yeah, there is that. Of course, Elon Musk has been talking an awful lot about Donald Trump recently. Donald Trump has been talking about Elon Musk. He makes the point, and you've got to say, Donald Trump does know a thing or two about large sums of money. He makes the point that from his perspective, Twitter was overpriced. I mean, is there perhaps some truth in that?
Possibly. Twitter has got lots of issues, not only the fact that this deal is such a mess, but, it could be fair to say that it has been overpriced and that there is some possibility that a discount could be reasonable. But at this stage in the proceedings, given all of the things that have gone on so far, it's just yet another kind of nightmare problem for Twitter, which whatever happens with this deal, Twitter is the one that's going to be the loser in all of this. And of course, the staff that work for the company and the users that love the product, it really is a complete and utter mess.
Yeah, just on that point then, is perhaps the reason this deal has stalled something rather more prosaic, rather more straightforward, in fact, actually, for all his hopes of turning it into some kind of free speech utopia, the practicalities surrounding doing that would almost make it impossible?
I think he's slowly coming to the realization, potentially, that this is not going to be as straightforward as maybe he first thought. Some of his language he's used in interviews recently about content moderation and the fact that he met one of the EU leaders to do with the regulation that the EU's bringing in, the fact that he will, align Twitter to that and follow some of those rules, so shows a little bit of nuance in the fact that he's going to have to sort of bend to what is going to be needed for managing such a complex content platform like Twitter. So I do think that he may have bitten off more than he can chew, and it could be one step that he's taking now to kind of step away from this nightmare situation.
Matt Navarra, good to talk to you this morning. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Now, the Eurovision Song Contest reaches its grand final this evening in Turin with Ukraine, Italy, and believe it or not, the United Kingdom among the favourites to win. After 2 consecutive last-place finishes, and more than a decade, in fact, since the UK made the top 10, this man, Sam Ryder, a construction worker turned TikTok star, is second favourite to win, with his entry, Spaceman. But if he is to win, he'll have to beat odds-on favourites, Ukraine's rap folk crossover band, I didn't even know that was a thing, at Kalish Orchestra. The group were hotly tipped to take the grand prize, even before Russia's invasion. Joining us now, journalist and, of course, Eurovision expert Caroline Westbrook. Caroline, lovely to see you this morning.
Morning.
Let's get the British entry out of the way, shall we? Look, so often have I heard that, you know what, this is going to be our year, we're going to do well, and then finally all I have ringing in my ears are the words "no point." That I'm going to say I'm a bit sceptical about this. Are you convinced that we're going to have a good showing tonight?
OK, you're right. It's understandable that, you know, to be sceptical. You've heard this so many times that we're going to do well, and it doesn't happen. I am here to tell you that you can throw that scepticism out of the window, because I think we really do have a chance of doing well this year. You know, it's aside from the fact it is a very good song. Sam Ryder is a fantastic performer. He's got an amazing voice. I've seen the footage of the rehearsals he's done in Turin, which has been up on YouTube. It's absolutely amazing. It's a different league from some of the stuff we've sent in recent years. I mean, obviously, there's a sense of dissent and disbelief in the UK that we could genuinely do well at this. But I've been saying for years that if you do get the right song and the right singer and the whole package, it's not just about having a song that you can remember. You've got to actually be able to perform it well and stage it well. And we've kind of ticked all those boxes this year. So anyone can genuinely do well at this. If you look at the country, I know there's this whole thing about neighbourly voting and this, that, and the other. But if you look at the countries that have won in recent years, there's a huge kind of diversity of countries that don't necessarily benefit from the so-called neighbourly voting blocks that have won, because they've sent really, really good songs, and they perform them really, really well. And then on the night, that's been what the voters have gone for.
Caroline, let's because we're pushed for time. Let's then talk about the favourites, the Ukrainian entry, which apparently I'm told is a folk rap crossover. That's a Venn diagram that I've never encountered before. Just tell us a little bit about them, because apparently they're quite good, and even before the invasion, we're being tipped for top place.
I personally would have thought this song, even before everything that's happened, would be a contender for the top 5. This kind of thing always does very, very well at Eurovision. And Ukraine always put up like a very, very good showing. Obviously, the song's taken on a lot of extra meaning, a lot of extra resonance in the wake of the conflict. And I think it'll be a very, very worthy winner. Obviously, a lot's going to depend on how the voting goes on the night, because 50% of the votes are given by juries from across Europe of music experts. So it's obviously going to get a huge televote. We're just going to have to wait and see how it does with the jurors as well.
Just very quickly, if we can, because Jackie Belter, our sports presenter and, of course, Eurovision aficionado, alerted me to it. Norway, 2 men in masks singing a song about giving a banana to a wolf. What?
Yeah, it's the combination I've been wanting at Eurovision for ages. It's Eurovision meets the masked. Eurovision meets the masked singer. What can I say? Yeah, it's Give That Wolf a Banana by the mysterious duo Subwoofer, 2 guys in yellow masks. This has everything. This has a dance routine. This has a catchy chorus. You're going to be up on your feet. You're going to be wanting to practice the moves. Nobody knows who they are. It doesn't matter because it's brilliant.
Caroline, pleasure to talk to you. I will be looking forward to seeing them talking about giving that wolf a banana later on this evening. For now, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
From one story to another. Oh, yes, new footage released of the first beaver born in Exmoor for 400 years. It's all to mark its first birthday. The young beaver, named Rashford, has been regularly spotted with its parents on the National Trust Holnacott estate in Somerset since it was born last year. To mark the occasion, the conservation charity has released new footage of the nice beaver on a static camera. Rashford was hard at work, dam building and moving mud with his dad, Yogi. Almost 8:47 after the break. We have round 3 of the papers in the company of the journalist Badisha and the writer Matthew Stadler. Welcome back. Time for a final run through the papers with the broadcaster and journalist Badisha and the writer Matthew Stadler. And of course, we are pushed for time, guys, so let's go straight on into it. Matt, your first story, page 4 of the Express. The European Union attempting to punish the United Kingdom after Brexit. I mean, who'd have thought it?
Who'd have thought I'm going to be really quick in this one because I'm desperate to get the dog who went to the pub story in later, Neil.
Don't worry, we will get it on, I promise. Don't you worry.
This is about Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's the Secretary of State for Brexit opportunities, if there are such things. And you can guess what I voted for, and also for government efficiency. And he's basically saying that the EU is trying to punish Britain for Brexiting, for leaving the EU. This is a story that has been rumbling on and is now reaching fever pitch. It's about the sort of de facto border down the Irish Sea, the checks on goods between Britain and Northern Ireland, the DUP desperately against the Northern Ireland Protocol because it aligns Northern Ireland with the rest of Ireland. And this is a huge story because, of course, it was Boris Johnson's government who negotiated the Brexit deal, and they're now considering, whether it's bluff or not, ripping up a significant part of it. So you might blame Boris Johnson's government, you might blame the EU, but the consequences of what happens if they do rip this up are possibly extreme because there could be a trade war. We've already got massive inflation, as we were talking about earlier, in this country and within the EU. So everyone's a loser if they don't sort this out quickly.
Badisha, bog off. Page 2 of the Times. Buy one, get one free.
Well, you bog off too. OK, so this is about pounds of actual flesh versus pounds sterling. You'll remember back in 2020, after his near-fatal brush with death, having COVID, Boris Johnson vowed that he would make sure that there was a lot less pre-9 p.m. Advertising of food that is high in salt, sugar and fat. He was going to put curbs on unhealthy food, tackle the obesity crisis, tackle buy one, get one free offers, 2-for-1 offers that actually encourage people to buy more than they need. That's now on hold because under pressure from all of his backbenchers who are businessmen themselves and who are also putting pressure on Johnson to get rid of unconservative ideas such as the nanny state telling people that they're fat and they should eat less and exercise more. Johnson is dialing down, holding back, delaying by a year all of these promises that he made. So don't expect any lessening of all of these convenience food, junk food adverts, promotions happening anytime soon.
Page 2 of the Telegraph, Matthew. An interesting one, this. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe being very candid with Boris Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, who wasn't impressed by Nazanin when she gave that press conference a couple of months after finally being released back to Britain from Iran? We should be absolutely clear about this. The people ultimately responsible for her incarceration, sometimes solitary confinement in Iran, was the Iranian regime, which in my view is an evil regime. But in 2017, notoriously, Boris Johnson, then Foreign Secretary, he said, and it was wrong, and catastrophically wrong, that Nazanin had been teaching journalism over there. That was a terrible gaffe, and Nazanin believes, and Iranian media, I believe, have reported it to have been the reason why she was kept in prison for longer than she otherwise might have been. So she spoke truth to power when she met the Prime Minister for the first time after this ordeal yesterday in Downing Street and said to him that she'd been living in the shadow of his words for 4.5 years.
Right, Badisha, let's skip a story, shall we, and go to page 27 of The Guardian, because the little trail I have here is brilliant. The Queen Barbie doll has sold out. You get 30 seconds, on you go.
They made 20,000 of them. You could buy them for 95 quid from lovely John Lewis, patriotic John Lewis, and then they migrated onto eBay for double the amount because capitalism. But you can get these lovely Jubilee dolls. There might be more of them coming soon, Mattel are hinting. If you look at them, not going to lie, she looks pretty good. She looks like Helen Mirren with a dash of Kate Blanchett.
Yeah, it's a good look. Final story of the day, Matt. On you go. A dog walks into a pub.
Hang on, Helen Mirren with a dash of Kate Blanchett. I love that description. It's perfect. Yes, This is my favourite story. I know it's your favourite story, Neil. This is the dog that went to the pub. This is in Stockport in Greater Manchester. Mark Howarth was out, I think, at a casino, and he locked his front door from the outside, but of course you're able to open it, in this case, from the inside, and that is exactly what Woody the Rottweiler managed to do. He opened the door from the inside, strolled down to the pub, the local, which is a whole mile away, where apparently he's given so many treats, he absolutely loves it, turned up at the bar, quite literally, and the barman then had to call Mark to tell him that he had his hound. Wonderful opportunities for headlines, of course, Rovers return, pour us a large one. I just love this story.
No. The big question is, was he feeling rough the next day? Matt, Padisha, we will leave it there. Thanks again. Always entertaining. We'll be back after this with more on Ukraine.